Okay, good afternoon. Is that okay with the sound? I'm from Austria originally, so I have an accent which might be a bit difficult for some of you, but hope you get used to it. And I've been a nun for almost 34 years and started in Thailand in the forest tradition, which is quite close, to nature. Living monasteries are in the forest, and the teacher is considered to nature, the forest is considered to be one of the teachers. So I have been considering, how this very ancient teaching can benefit what's happening today, because it has a lot of good points, but it has also other points, which are not so good, and how we can, in a respectful way, peel those layers off and bring forth what is really timeless and deeply supportive, whatever is happening, in Iron Age India, where it all started, and now in the middle of the poly crisis. And, I think there's two different benefits which we can receive from this Buddhist tradition. On the one hand, as several of the speakers were already saying, it really helps us to get to know our own minds, how they work, and be less afraid and less kind of mesmerized, by all of the shenanigans of the mind, which is, in the Buddhist teaching, the mind is considered one of the 6 sense organs. It's not like a special one. It's just like the nose smells, the eyes see, the ears hear, and the mind thinks. No big deal. The thoughts, they are just like smells. We can't really control it, but we can learn how we relate to those thoughts. And then over time, even the thought patterns will change, but that takes a long time sometimes. But still learning to be less mesmerized and afraid by those thinking patterns is really what is the greatest benefit this teaching can give us, in this work which has brought us all together here for this conference. And, the title of the conference, Refuge and Response, Loving Engagement in a Time of Transition, says it all, to find some kind of a refuge from the thinking mind so we can respond in a loving way. And first we have to respond in a loving way to our own minds. And then, from that, we can respond to what's happening, around us also in such a way. And then on the other hand, what the Dharma can support us in learning is to open ourselves viscerally to the teaching of the earth. The earth doesn't speak to us with words, but she speaks to us in ways which can be received by the body, as an organ of listening. Because if we learn to sense with and in the body, then that's how we're going to connect with the greater body of the earth, because these human bodies and the body of the earth are of one process. And that's something, intellectually, it's a good way to get started in that direction, but then to really develop the sensitivity to sense this is a ongoing practice which needs a lot of repetition, and to basically learn from the earth how we best can respond to this crisis, which can't be really responded to from the same level of consciousness which created the crisis in the first place. And so by training, to ground ourselves in these earth bodies, which are made from the same elements as the body of the planet, we become increasingly more and more capable, to receive instructions. and receiving them with the body. And then as our body gets basically rewired on this very basic neural pathway level, it will have influence on the way we think and speak and act. But it needs to start from the ground up. And meditation is the technology which can help us to develop that kind of sensitivity, so we can allow that process to take place in us. And I have here a quote from Beth McCabe, who is a Diné ceremonial leader and activist. She is it's called also Woman Stand Shining. I'm sure a lot of you have heard of her. And she says, the earth is vast and she's got us. She's coming up with her own strategies. We need to be led by her. We are not going to save the earth, but rather she will guide us what to do. We need to go with Mother Earth's strategy. And I think that, that capacity to go with Mother Earth's strategy can be basically cultivated through meditation practice. And, by learning to drop from the head into the body, which is, sometimes called to be the longest journey, to come from here to here. It needs a lot of training to have that confidence, to really trust ourselves that we can receive instructions in that way. Because our whole culture, is a lot about not supporting our confidence that we can trust our own sense experience. We just need, very complicated machines and very expensive technology in order to know what's really going on. But maybe that isn't really true. Maybe this is just one myth, which we have been running after for hundreds of years, and now it's starting to crack, showing a lot of cracks and less power, to convince us that we need to only go this one way. But we can come back to our bodies, which are, they have emerged out of the planet through our parents, basically, and are kept alive by eating, drinking, breathing. And I have another quote here by monk, Venerable Mahagosananda, who died 2007. He was a very well-known Cambodian activist monk, and he said, I am the world and I eat the world. Reflecting thus, I understand all the teachings of the Buddha. I am the world and I eat the world. So that very simple sentence, can really give us a kind of a sense of this inseparability. And that's really, at the root of the problem, as you all know. But to really retrain ourselves to not constantly fall prey to that very, very deep conditioning that is work on the cushion, or in whatever way you are wanting, to meditate and reflect on that inseparability. And to experience these bodies as organs of listening, as lifelines into the vast body of the planet. That's something, we need to do together. And there's also, different skillful means which can help for that to be amplified. For example, art is very supportive. Ritual is supportive. And doing it, in groups, of course, is also supportive. And that's also, what I would like to talk a little bit more this afternoon at 4:30 to anybody who would like to come along on a little journey, imagining, an earth sanctuary as a place where these kind of practices, can be done in a custom made space which can help us, to remember this fact, that our bodies and the body of the earth are of one process. And looking, inside ourselves, what is moving in us and what is the earth asking us to know? What is life in us looking for? And doing that, on this visceral level by connecting with the aliveness which we can sense inside of our own bodies. For example, just right now, as you're sitting here, you probably can feel, the weight of your bodies and the gravity of the earth, which keeps us in place. And then, if we are sensing inside of the body, you can probably, feel a vibrancy and aliveness. And that vibrancy, that aliveness is the way, how the planet communicates with us. And, it can come from the ground up. We can sense it. But we also, we are eating it and drinking it and breathing it, that aliveness. So to shift the way of looking at the body, in a systematic way, by imagining that this is possible. And then over time, it opens up complete new avenues of communication. Learning to trust this capacity to sense in this way, this is where we need meditation, because we have a tendency to overthink everything. And what we can't sense or feel, we need to overthink. So in order to go this different avenue into communicating with the vast body of the planet directly, we need skillful means to step out of the thinking mind again and again, as what James was instructing us. You have to do it many, 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 many times. And by doing it really many, 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 many times, the intensity, of the pressure of this pattern starts to relax. And then the confidence in that we can do this starts to grow. And that's, how the practice unfolds over the years. So to, step out of this habitual ways of looking we have absorbed, from the cultural paradigm, it's a long-term work, and we have already seen, that solutions from a disconnected place don't gain much traction. So there's something missing, and this something, I think, we can receive from the earth herself. And another quote here I brought from Vanessa Machado de Oliveira's new book, Outgrowing Modernity. She speaks to that as well, and she says, in our attempt to heal, we are often tempted to try to control the process, a conditioning deeply embedded in us by modernity. This journey, however, requires release and surrender, letting the song and dance from the ground guide you, immersing yourself in the sensations that arise. Healing happens not on your terms, but in the movement that unfolds. So, by coming back to our bodies as direct lifelines into the great body of the living earth, we can open up to this data flow and, receive the instructions in a wordless way. And then by receiving those instructions, they will change the wiring in the body. And then the thinking, the speaking, and the acting changes accordingly. I think a good proof is to just try it out for yourself. And we have still a few minutes left, so just sensing the weight of the body on the cushion on the chair. And feeling, sensing into the body, is there an aliveness, a vibrancy you can connect with? The imagining we are sitting inside of Earth, because the body of the Earth doesn't end, under our feet. It goes up several hundred miles. The atmosphere is also, strictly speaking, part of the body of the Earth, and we are inside of her. And what is the Earth asking us to know? To just sit with that kind of a question, with an open heart and open mind. And whenever thinking comes up, then just as, James was telling us, to just let go of that thought and come back to the body. Come back to feeling, sensing the vibrancy, the aliveness. Or maybe it's a certain kind of a humming sense, a humming sound, a high-pitched sound. Just, relating to the body as an organ of listening, which can receive information in the true sense of the word, this coming into the formation of the body and changing us on that bodily level. So this imagining to be sitting inside of the body of the earth can help us to sense more fully. And allowing the song and dance of the earth to change us on a visceral level. To be part of the immune system of the planet. Who, has been knowing what to do since a very long time, since over 4.6 billion years, knowing how to sustain life. Without talking. And, many of our Indigenous brothers and sisters on this planet, they have been able to preserve this way of communication. But we have kind of forgotten it, because there's so much education on top of it. But we can remember it. And, doing that together and doing that in a dedicated space, which supports this different kind of perception of being inside the earth, not on top of it. And other skillful means which can help to amplify the communication. gonna ring the bell. It's time for handing over to the next speaker. So thank you so much, and maybe I see some of you at 4:30, either today or tomorrow.
So I thank you. And each one of us are going to share some words, some reflections as well that I think in many ways are just sort of reiterating, repeating, reminding us of these themes that have already surfaced in these beautiful ways in this hall and that hall and this larger land hall. And I'm going to speak a little bit too, also around listening. You know what Ayya brought in, these ways of listening, and the questions of last night. What is it to be human? And the question that Kirsten left us this morning. How do we know this? And maybe an extension of that is, how do we feel this all? How do we know it all? How do we feel it all? How do we open to the complex, painful dimensions of our times right now? And how does the Dharma, or these ways of listening and opening, really serve us and support us in that? Many of you know the word sati, which is the Pali word that is often translated as mindfulness. It's just non-judgmental, open, accepting, presencing of what's happening now. And there's that kind of simplicity of the practice that James pointed to this morning. Easy, right? We're just with what's happening, but it couldn't in some ways be more challenging. There's so much deep conditioning to not be here for our experience. So much of this practice is learning to come back, to be here, to open to the multidimensional nature of what it is to be alive. That's where we learn what it is to be human, what it is to hold the complexities of our time, what it is to feel it, what it is to know it. And that another way, well, there's two ways. One way that sometimes sati is understood, I've heard this communicated by many teachers, is as love. And that there's a quality that's so similar, this non-judgmental, open, accepting presence. It can be very akin to love, a quality of the heart. And I also like to think of it as listening, like Ayya was speaking to, these just non-language ways of listening. Joy Harjo's poem, languages that are not in sound, but other circles of motion. Just how we can attune to all these different ways of knowing and feeling and sensing. And I reflect so often actually on my own experience being an adolescent and a very misanthropic teenager, and looking around at the world and the absurdity of what I was seeing, the horrors of injustice and violence and suffering, and my heart was kind of just getting more and more contracted and protected and defended. And then I had a kind of incredible teacher and teaching in Celtic Druidic animist practices. It sort of fell into me. And I spent many of those years of my adolescence learning from this earth and kind of suspending disbelief that perhaps I could actually be in communication with more than human relatives, and receive sign and from red-tailed hawks and lizards and creeks and rocks, and how that just opened me up in a way that I still think of as saving my life, that there was suddenly an embeddedness in the mystery and magic and just beauty of being alive in the world. And then years later, teaching environmental studies as a college professor, and I kind of was doing the dutiful, go through the, problems that we're facing in the world every week. And then the last week would be like a reason for hope chapter, something like that. And my students, I could see myself in them, that the despair and the numbness and the cynicism, maybe, kind of the most painful of all. And it was around then that I met Joanna and got my working orders from her, as many of you in this room have, and started bringing in these practices of reconnection, the work that reconnects, into the classroom. And again, what it is to listen to one another, to open up these capacities for hearing people share in a room. I don't know if I'll ever be able to have children. I don't have a faith in a future, or I do have inspiration for creating something new and the possibility of emergence. But that brought the life and the magic and the potential back into those spaces. And so much of our practice here, what it is to listen to our more than human kin, to listen to each other, that quality of kind, non-judgmental, receptive, openness. There's a depth there. It's profound. That kind of real, deep listening, that Ayya is pointing to as well. And what a gift that is that we can give each other. So I also have the kind of task or honor of introducing the framework that's holding these days together. And we're using Joanna Macy's spiral practice, which in many ways I would say begins in this some kind of fundamental way with listening, with opening, with really kind of waking up to who we are. And Joanna would say, waking up to the beauty of life on whose behalf we can act, the beauty of life. So we start with gratitude. And there's this schematic right here, but I'm not sure if everyone can see it. But we start with gratitude. There's this Constance you did such a beautiful job of embodying the spiral last night, but to repeat it in the room, that, to recognize, the magic of being alive. What an extraordinary thing. And what's so beautiful about being alive. And the things that we love, that's what brings us here, is that love, that care, the way our hearts are touched. And from there, with that kind of resource of beauty and gratitude, is when we open into that dimension of honoring the pain for the world, honoring, how much it hurts to see all that we lose, all that we love be harmed. I mean, it is no small thing. And Kirsten, spoke so beautifully about how our practice, it increases our capacity to just be with it, to open to it, to turn towards it. So radical to actually turn towards. It's so subversive to turn towards. And from that turning towards, we start to embody and know that we are not alone, that we belong, that we're connected, that we're part of something larger, that, the love that motivates us and that also causes that pain is something that binds us together, something that speaks to the ways in which we're so imbricated in life. We're so much part and parcel of this like larger magic. And then it's from there that we go forth. What is mine to do? And again, like that, this was just named from Ayya. And it's kind of the how how all of you are here. We're kind of working this koan of engaged practice. Like, how do we engage in the world with open hearts and in solidarity and in community with one another? Again, like no small thing. And this spiral gives us just one way in which to work with that, like to open to that possibility of having the capacity to be with it all, recognizing who we might truly be, who we are, and then what is mine to do? What is it to wake up to the beauty of life on whose behalf we can act? And this listening piece, I love this is from Alexis Pauline Gumbs. And she describes listening as not only the normative ability to hear, it is a transformative and revolutionary resource that requires quieting down and tuning in. Quieting down and tuning in. And that's what we give ourselves this opportunity to do also. Quiet down and tune in. We're going to do a little bit of practice that can kind of embody the gratitude piece, what it is to really quiet down and tune in and hold space listening for one another. So this will be very short, but you'll just turn to someone next to you. Actually, maybe I'll describe the practice first and then have you turn towards someone next to you. And one person is going to have a repeating question. So they'll ask the other person, what is one thing you love about living on earth in these times? What is one thing you love about living on earth in these times? And if you want to abbreviate that, you can. What is one thing you love? What is one thing you're grateful for, maybe? But you'll ask that question and the other person will respond, whatever is emergent. And then the person who asks will say, thank you, and they will ask again. So the asker is listening, just full body, open listening, receptive. And the respondent is responding from what emerges. It's that simple. And then there'll be 2 minutes, and then there'll be a switch.
What is something you love?
Going outside of it and trying to expand and connect.
Coming back, noticing the energy in the body, the energy in the room, how that is to ground in gratitude. And passing on to Carol.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about, what it means to be open and recognizing the sacredness of each moment through practice, through a daily ritual, that can be a practice of something sacred. And one is that we get an opportunity to walk this land. How many have had time to go on the path today? Yeah, thank you. You see, not so many hands. It's our first day, no judgment, but I would love to just bring in the invitation to go. There's so many pathways. And if you meet Ayya, you get to go to one of my favorite ones, I think. Haven't been on that path with you yet, but I believe it's the Sangha path. Yes, one of my favorites. And, we talked a little bit about James was talking about walking and walking meditation. And from the Buddha Dharma perspective, it is a form of concentration. It's a deep practice of connecting and slowing down and embodying not only what is happening here, but the reciprocity of the relational component as we walk and as we practice, as we listen, as we stand, as we see, as we hear, as we connect, and then widening our lens even more. And so I'm giving in this aspiration of gratitude. For some of us, our heart, just want to acknowledge, might be tender and grief. And sometimes it's not easy to have gratitude or thankfulness. Sometimes our hearts are closed for whatever reason, circumstances. So again, just acknowledging this heart of ours. Is it open? Is it closed? Is it half-hearted, as one of my beloved teachers would say? Is it clear-hearted? Is it full-hearted? Is it strong-hearted? And how does that influence us giving thanks, us having a connection to appreciate what's sacred in ourselves and each other and the land, let alone this beloved earth? So in Indigenous ways, gratitude is not only spoken, it's lived. And with the earth, we listen. What is it giving us? We notice each season, the cycle of seasons, and the aliveness that we're part of this cycle of, winter, spring, summer, fall. In some places in the world, we have only 2 seasons. I would think San Francisco might be one of them because it's 68 degrees all year. But I'm always talking to my Filipino relatives, and they're like, we have 2 seasons, wet and dry. It's always hot. And, but it's still the earth is speaking to us in those transitions. And those who work with the land know that. And those who fish know that. And, those who are aware that, that the very medicine bag they carry is relating to the forest or the land or the ocean. And therefore, they know the changes of the seasons, and they see it through the cycles of the moon. And the cycles of the moon influences the winds, and the winds influences the tides. And for us, it influences our body. And for some of us, who are born as women, self-identify women, it influences our cycle. And are we in the cycle of the rhythm of this earth or the moon? It's just an inquiry. So in Buddhism, we're taught that nothing exists alone. The rice in our bowl carries rain, sun, the farmer's hands. To eat mindfully is to bow to the whole universe. Gratitude is a practice of seeing the threads of life that makes it possible. So both ways reminds us, whether it's Indigenous or the Buddha Dharma, that we are not separate from any of this. And gratitude is not a thought. It's a way of how we walk this path of living in balance and what sustains us. So how do we take this in to have a daily practice, a daily ritual? One of, my late beloved Basque elder, Angela Sarian, I've said her, she's with me this retreat. She was an amazing storyteller and speaker. And, when we can ritualize the changes that are happening in our lives, we are in the company of what is the mystery, great mystery, what is sacred. And we've lost our ways with initiatory processes, our rites of passage from a child to moving out of childhood to a young teen, all the hormonal changes. They don't even know what's going on. And some cultures still practice that benchmark of that initiation. And it's witnessed by all in the community that this change is happening. And then we have, the rituals of coming from sweet 16 in some cultures, or coming into a bar mitzvah, coming into, so many things, like just going off to college, leaving the home, marriage, birth, death. But a lot's been lost, the smaller rituals that we've witnessed. So how do we retain it to a place of having a daily practice with it? In Indigenous ways, ritual is a part of ordinary life. To greet the dawn in the morning with a song, to offer tobacco to a tree, to pause before drinking water and connecting with this relative water, acknowledging the rivers. These are daily acts of the circle of aliveness that we're a part of. And in Buddhist rituals, every day it's woven walking with awareness in the breath of the earth, letting each step be like that bow, or as James brought in, Techno Han's words of kissing the earth. And it's sacred grounds carrying our ancestors and holding all beings. And when we walk to the garden or to the bus or across the street, we can make it a ritual of gratitude, thanking the earth for holding us, for holding me. A ritual of reciprocity. May my steps be gentle and cause no harm. A ritual of presence. I am here. I am home. Every day, walking becomes a thread, weaving back into belonging. Step by step, the ordinary becomes sacred. So I have a young 10-year-old nephew at home. You hear the word bored a lot in that age group. They don't have their technology. And I was like, really? The mundane, the boring? What's so boring? Can you explain it to me? I think we just lost our way of looking how extraordinary the ordinary is. And ritualizing every moment as something to be thankful for. And every moment as a place of ritualizing our gratitude so deeply that we're touched. And we're in relations to all my relations and to all beings. Last night Dean was talking about his grandparents, his grandmother, his teachings. And, the grandparents are also our sacred mountains, our rivers, our oceans. And how do we care and honor for them and connect with them? And in Buddhist teachings, our ancestors are alive within us, and not just in our blood, but our teachers and our lineages. Important strangers that became a relative on my path, who have now left, but yet impact me, that the very presence of my presence, they still live through me. And every cell in our body, as well as our blood and our breath, also is the same as the veins and the terrain of the earth. And we're remembering with each step who we are. So how do we live this, how do we live this gratitude, this reciprocity, this presence? And honestly, I do love the words of Thich Nhat Hanh. He always reminds us that everything is a prayer. When he lights an incense, he remembers and honors his ancestors and all those who've come before him, just with the lit of incense before practice. So maybe when you are out for a walk, you find a sit spot and you sit and you practice listening. And in that moment, you cultivate a stillness that awakens a part of you that's waiting for you to attend to. And then we can step back into this circle of kinship and belonging. Awareness and spaciousness unify us in this life cycle. Isn't that beautiful? And I love to bring in the words of Zenju Earthlyn Manuel. The earth as my home. I rise to which I call to do, have agreed to do. I sit upon the earth among trees, breathing, rising, and falling like those who've come before me. I plant my feet in the dirt and remember how to live without feeling terrified. I let ancestors take me up with them on horses, riding bareback to ceremony, learning not to be an alien in a place I came from, but blend back into the dirt, fiercely, fearlessly, knowing that which brought me here will take me home. So let us walk gently. Let us walk with gratitude. Let us walk with reciprocity. May each step be a prayer. May each breath be a ritual of blessing. And in walking this way, we return to the truth that has always been there. The earth is alive, and we are alive with her. Never alone. Thank you.
I wanted to say a few words about why mindfulness and this practice, if I can get my ears cooperating. Yeah. Yeah, because if you're new to practice, you might say, well, what's the connection? Why do we do all of this quiet sitting? And yeah, what's the point? So I wanted to say some thoughts about that, these Buddhist practices and these teachings. And I was remembering back when Lou this morning was talking about that gathering here at Spirit Rock in 2013, and I was part of that, putting that event together, the International Dharma Vipassana Teachers Conference. And I had run into a friend, a guy named Bob Doppelt. He contacted me after many years. We were not didn't have contact, and he said he used to sit with me in the '80s, and he said, "Hey, you remember me?" And I did. doesn't always happen, but I did. I said, yeah, up in Brightonbush, you were the guy with the plaid shirt. And he said, yeah, that's me. I felt so happy that I could remember. And he said, well, I've been involved in climate these last years. And it turns out he'd been working with legislatures and doing all kinds of amazing work. He actually had convened a consortium of 18 different environmental groups who worked with the Obama administration to try to keep them on point. And he was the leader of that consortium, and so we got to know each other. And I said, "Wow, it's so great that those two worlds came together: your Dharma practice, your Dharma world, and your climate environmental world. How amazing!" And then he looked at me and he said, "The Dharma holds the key." And he explained why and wrote a book about it. No Buddhist jargon in it at all. It's for layperson. But when he said that, I said, I want you to come to that International Vipassana Teachers Conference and have all of those teachers hear you say, the Dharma holds the key. And that was, for me, a very exciting moment because things did happen from that conference, and that's One Earth Sangha came out of that, and I wanted to share with you a bit about why the Dharma holds the key. As was said, the Buddha taught about suffering and the end of suffering. He said, the more you are in touch and not afraid to feel suffering, the more you can meet it wisely and understand how to grow from it, deepen our compassion and deepen our wisdom and deepen our love. And the key to all of that, and these Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path, that's the fourth truth, the way to awakening, is mindfulness. The opening line on the discourse on mindfulness, the Satipatthana Sutta, says, there is one direct way, Thich Nhat Hanh translates it, there is one most wonderful way to overcome sorrow, lamentation, and grief, pain, anxiety, despair, and realize the highest happiness. And that is the establishment of mindfulness. That's a lot. That's quite a sentence, isn't it? One way to overcome all pain and suffering and realize the highest happiness. But it turns out he was onto something. He knew, and it's amazing how he figured it out and everything that came from that. Because mindfulness, when you are present for something without flinching, without resisting, but really learning into the nature of reality, mindfulness of all the different mental factors that we're imbued with, we're given. There's 52 mental factors in some systems. Some are painful: greed, hatred, delusion, jealousy, all of those unpleasant states. And some are beautiful: love, generosity, compassion, wisdom, etc., etc. Mindfulness has one unique property. It weakens all the unwholesome states. We can hold our sorrow and our suffering with compassion and understanding and clarity and patience. And it strengthens all the wholesome states. It both cultivates them, and when they're here, strengthens them when you apply mindfulness to it. And this neuroscience has borne this out quite clearly and brilliantly. So when we're practicing mindfulness and we are experiencing a wholesome state, we apply it and we don't miss that wholesome state, which is very easy to do for most of us because we have our radar out for what can go wrong. We have this negative confirmation bias. As Rick Hansen says, the brain is like Teflon for positive experiences and Velcro for negative experiences. But mindfulness can change that around. And when we are experiencing something that touches us, when we apply mindfulness to it so that we really let it register in our consciousness and in our body, it amplifies and deepens the grooves, deepens the neural pathways. Rick says, if you take this as a formula, when you are experiencing a wholesome moment and you take 15 seconds of really letting it register, which means rather than saying, oh, feeling good right now, but to notice, oh, this is what it feels like to feel good. It's the difference. You do that 6 times in a day, that's 90 seconds of wholesome moments, if you can handle it. And you do that over a 2-week period, you will notice a shift in your well-being. Not guaranteed, but that's the inclination. 1, because you're deepening the neural pathways, and 2, because you're starting to be on the lookout for the good. So there's a lot more I could say, but I thought I'd just end with this simple little exercise to show you how this works, particularly since gratitude is the first part of the spiral. So I hope it's clear. That's the framework generally that we'll be following, starting with gratitude, opening up to our pain and our grief, moving into seeing with new eyes, and then going forth as that, that picture shows. But just try this. So just close your eyes right now and think of something, some blessing in your life. Someone or something that you're grateful for, grateful to. Have an image of them or of the situation. Now give a silent thank you to that person or to life, just right from your heart. Thank you. And now just relax and enjoy that thank you. How does it feel in there? Thank you. Take a nice deep breath. One second, the next time, once again, you probably have so many blessings. Pick a blessing. Call up an image. Once again, a sincere thank you. Thank you. Thank you, life. Thank you, my dear friend. And then just relax and enjoy it. Don't miss it. Feel the landscape of gratitude inside. One last time, we do things in 3s in Buddhism. Nice deep breath. And one more blessing in your life. Have an image. Enjoy it. Thank you. Let yourself feel it. A real one. Thank you so much for being in my life. Enjoy it. How does it feel in your body, in your heart, in your mind? Hmm. So that's one of many ways that mindfulness works. But since we're doing gratitude and you can see directly, it opens up all the good inside.